What's going on, guys? Murfs YT13 here, and here we go. Here we go, I'm on camera. Have a look at this. Weird. Weird, I know. And I'm in black and white because this is a shit video to make. However, I want to talk about Aston Villa. We're fucking dire. We are absolutely atrocious. We've been the worst I've ever seen us. Let me tell you a little bit about my support of Aston Villa and how I became an Aston Villa fan, because everybody always asks, like, why Villa? And I say, well, fuck, I don't know. I have no idea. Basically, one of my really good friends, I was actually watching the Master Bucks. He's not my really good friend. I don't know him. Great YouTuber, though. If you haven't checked him out, go and have a look. I'll link him in the description. I was basically watching the Master Bucks, and he became a fan around about the same time I did. Around 2005, 2006, when Fox Sports really started covering the Premier League properly, and it was starting to become more of a trend that it would be live and all of that sort of thing. So me and a good friend, he was already a big Premier League fan, and he used to stream it on the internet, whatever, used to find it however he could, used to get it fucking shipped over. I don't know, he didn't really, but that'd be pretty cool. I mean, that would be a big fan. You'd have to be, anyway. So I became a fan through him, and so I said, okay, I'll pick a team, and I'm pretty sure back then it was Milan Baros. You know, who else did we have running around? You know, Olaf Melberg and Martin Lawson, Wilfred Baumer. You know, these kind of guys. These were the kind of guys that I fell in love with. You know, I was like, man, this is a great team, and they're sort of a mid-range team that could do something. They might not do something. You just never know. And so that's basically, I picked Aston Villa. I liked the colours, you know, I liked the traditional sort of colours that they wore, and yeah, so I basically went from there. And I'm the kind of guy that once I pick a team, I don't change. That's it. You know, I've been a Collingwood supporter my whole life. I've been, even though actually when I was a little kid, until I was about 6 or 7, I was actually so I'm basically contradicting myself, but I was a Western Bulldogs supporter. If you're not familiar with the AFL, Google it, or don't. I mean, it's pretty exclusive to Australia, but I was a Western Bulldogs fan first, and then, you know, my dad, my brother, they're all Collingwood fans. You know, a lot of my family's Collingwood, so I decided to sort of jump ship, but I was 7, so come on, I'm stuck with them since. But yeah, so basically getting back onto Aston Villa, so I started supporting them and just became really an avid supporter, and I've since lived in England. I lived in Manchester for 11, almost pretty much a year, and yeah, so I started supporting Aston Villa. I went and saw them multiple times, you know, 10 or so times at Villa Park. I lived across the road from City of Manchester Stadium in Sports City. I actually had a view. If I walked out onto my balcony, we lived on the top of an apartment complex, and I walked out on my balcony, I could see City of Manchester Stadium. And I found out while I was at work that Aston Villa are in town to play in the FA Cup against Manchester City. So I actually went and walked across the road and went as an away fan to City of Manchester Stadium. I think there was about 700 Villa fans there, and I think there was, you know, like 40-odd thousand of Manchester City fans. So that was an experience, and I couldn't actually leave after the game, even though I was telling, like, the security guards and that, I live just over there, like, I can see my house, and they said, no, you can't leave, because all I had was a Villa shirt on. So that's sort of some of my experiences. So that's sort of the love that I have for the club. Like, I'm not one of those supporters who's never been to a game, who doesn't know what it's about, who hasn't lived the culture. So I consider myself like a proper Aston Villa fan, even though I'm on the other side of the world in Australia. But so that's a little bit about me and how I came to be an Aston Villa supporter. And you know, since then I've spent just countless hours, you know, watching them losing a ton of sleep over Villa. You know, getting up at 2-3 a.m. in the morning to watch them, or staying up until 2-3 a.m. in the morning, going to the pub and, you know, having a few beers and watching them. I just want to talk a little bit about Villa now, like, and the situation that we're in, and maybe, you know, what's caused it, what has happened, like, what has come about, because, you know, like 2005, 2006 was really the start of the Martin O'Neill era. and the Randy Lerner era, and it was a very, very exciting time for the club, and that was probably part of the reason that I picked them, because they were the sort of club they felt like they were on the rise, and we certainly were. In that period of time, we certainly were on the rise, players that I mentioned, and you had like Gabby Agbon-Lahore, who was sort of just starting to, he was a young guy then, and you had John Carew coming through, and you just had all these really exciting players, Ashley Young, James Milner, Gareth Barry, and then all of a sudden we just shipped all those guys out, and then we became a selling club. I feel like we're really on the cusp of being sort of that Tottenham or Everton sort of size club that would just stick around that Europa League picture, and we'd be vying for that 6th spot. But at the end of the day, Martin O'Neill couldn't get the resources that he wanted. I mean, I'm not speaking from any actual factual knowledge, but just from the outside looking in, this is completely my opinion. And if you don't agree with it, leave in the comments below. If Villa fans are very passionate, and I love the Villa fans. So I'd like to get your input as well. Other fans as well. What's your perception of Aston Villa from outside of the club? What do you think we've done wrong? But my opinion on what we've done wrong is we didn't back Martin O'Neill in that time, and we became a club that sells. And of course, I'm only speaking from the perspective of a fan. I'm not a lifelong fan. I'm a passionate fan, but I'm certainly don't try to claim that I'm a lifelong fan, or that I've live and breathe Aston Villa. I wasn't born in the area. I wasn't brought up with it. I'm not ingrained in the culture, and that's why I want to hear from Birmingham guys who have been an Aston Villa supporter their whole lives, and they've seen the ultimate highs, they've seen the ultimate lows, which is probably right now it's probably the worst year in the club's history. I'd be interested to get your opinions on why we're down, but in my opinion, it was that's sort of when the tide sort of shifted to becoming a selling club. Once we lost Milner, we lost Barry, we lost Ashley Young, Stuart Downing, these kind of guys, we sold them and we never replaced them from that moment. To replace guys like Ashley Young, we brought in a guy like Charles Nzogbia, and we brought in guys like Alan Hutton, and serviceable players. I've got no problem with them as players, they're average, but that's what we replaced elite players with. We replaced them with average players, and then from that moment the culture sort of shifted to where we became this stepping stone for guys like Christian Benteke, who are going to come in and say, Benteke was pretty honest with the club from the moment he arrived. He said, I'm here to get into the Premier League. I'm here and to get somewhere else. He said, I want to play Champions League, and we can't offer Champions League. We can't even offer Premier League football at the moment to a lot of players. So I just feel like from that moment on, when Martin O'Neill wasn't backed the way he felt like he should be backed, and he walked out, we just never recovered. We never recovered from that moment. There's been glimpses of hope. Like, I thought when Paul Lambert came into the club, I thought, okay, he's a guy who's really going to steady the ship and just keep us in that mid-table slot, keep us safe, and maybe he can bring in some of the younger players, and we can start to produce some of that old sort of form that we used to produce. But he sort of hit a dead end with the powers that be as well, where they wouldn't back him. They gave him a shoestring budget to work with, and I certainly don't blame Paul Lambert. I thought he did okay with what he had. But then appointments like Gerard Houllier, Alex McLeish was just an awful appointment. I mean, who on earth thought that was a good idea, that Alex McLeish should come in? He's the enemy, and they brought him in anyway. It's just these sort of decisions. So I guess in a roundabout way, I'm sort of saying that I feel like it is the people who own the club who have killed their own creation by making really silly decisions. And I think listening to the fans has its value. I really do. I really feel like listening to the fans has a lot of value. and it should be taken into more consideration what our opinions of like the club are. You know, and I understand Randy Lerner is running a business, but at a certain point, you have to start making more decisions, not based on your own personal gain. And I think that's what has become a real problem. We've become a club that is a stepping stone. And now, not only are we a stepping stone, but now we are a club that has no teeth. We have no validity. We're a joke. We're a laughing stock because of just years and years and years of mismanagement. And I just read a quote on YouTube. I got a comment. I just watched True Geordie's video on Newcastle, which spurred me to do this because, you know, he's probably one of my favourite YouTubers, and his passion for Newcastle is obviously great. And one guy quoted the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He said, "Destruction leads to a very low path, but it also breeds creation." And I think that rings really true. I think that's a good way to look at it. It's putting a positive spin on relegation, and relegation is never a positive thing, in my opinion, with all the TV money that you miss out on, and it just cripples the club in terms of personnel. You know, you have to get rid of your best players because they want more, and I don't blame them. You know, I don't blame Jordan Ayew if he wants to leave at the end of the season, because he's been fantastic and he is a Premier League quality sort of player. But I thought that quote sort of rings true. You know, like, you get to the lowest ebb and then you see where you are. But my concern with Aston Villa is that we don't have that in the fabric of the club. We don't have the ability. We don't have that culture ingrained in the club. You know, trying to hold the grains of sand in. You know, we don't have that. We just let the grains of sand go. We let them fall out. I don't feel like we're tight as a club. The fans are fantastic, support the club absolutely unbelievably, but it's within the club. I just don't see that fight in the fabric of the club, and that's what I'm most concerned about. I don't want to see Aston Villa go down as much as anyone, but maybe we need it. Maybe we need it to weed out all of the bad things, and we've been trying to do that on the run, but while doing that, we've just made a ton of bad decisions, and it breaks my heart. It really does, because, you know, I love Aston Villa Football Club, and I will continue to support Aston Villa even when we're in the Championship. If we are in the Championship, I've got to remain optimistic. I just cannot write us off. Surely we can find something to just fight, but right now it's looking super dire. But I just wanted to get all that off my chest. I just feel like it's the right time. I'm inspired also by Sporting Tomo. Go and check out his channel. Tomo, he's a legend. Go and check out his channel. He's got some really good views on his club, West Ham, as well. I'll link it in the description. I'm just been inspired lately by guys like him, by guys like True Geordie, to maybe get into doing some of this sort of stuff and really just venting off my chest, because I've got a lot of things to say. If you found this interesting, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. And as always, it feels weird saying this to the camera face to face, but for Murfs YT13, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.